Commonwealth's attorneys and I have concluded that the NCAA sanctions were overreaching and unlawful.
Someone's got to develop a product that you and I, as a consumer, are going to want to buy.
The country needs a comprehensive energy plan.
Welcome to For the Record. We are pleased to be joined right now by the 5th Congressional District Representative for the United States Congress, Mr. Glenn G.T. Thompson. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Andrew, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
We'll start with the easy stuff, the midterm elections. It was a big win for Republicans. Congratulations on being elected to your fourth term as well.
Well, thank you. It was a good night. It was a challenging campaign, I think, all around. I was very pleased at the end of the night personally with my campaign. First of all, you always have to start there. The fact is, I represent 16 counties. I won all 16 counties, won by a margin of just about 64%. Some of the counties took over 80% of the vote, and so I'm very thankful for the support that is out there. Kind of fulfills my philosophy that your first election you got to win, and every election after that you have to earn, and you do that by working hard, doing the right things, and communicating. And overall, it was a huge night for Republicans all across the country.
What does that say with what the Republicans were able to gain, not only in the Senate, but the House? What does that say about the national aspect of the country?
Well, I think it just speaks to the dissatisfaction with the leadership, Democratic leadership in Washington right now. And I think that's a message that the Republicans and certainly Republican leaders need to pay attention to. The voters do pay attention. They know that elections have consequences, and they will impose their will if they're dissatisfied where they see a lack of leadership, whether it's being unresponsive at all to needs, and I think that's largely what the United States Senate was happening under Harry Reid's direction, or very dissatisfied with, decisions and leadership and executive orders coming out of the White House.
Now, with that Republican wave, as some people have talked about, and the national media has talked about it ad nauseum. What does that exactly say that the Obama administration has still tried to push some of their executive decisions through?
Well, it says that Barack Obama is not Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, if we learn from history, and you have to. I mean, if you don't learn from history, you risk repeating it. And I think that President Obama could really learn from what happened to President Clinton. President Clinton became a pragmatist in his second term after Republicans had taken control of the House and the Senate. He began to work with them, and he accomplished a significant amount of legislative victories as a team, and he's very well regarded. Unfortunately, right away, it's almost. President Obama kind of fell back on the premise that maybe he hasn't been liberal enough. He hasn't pushed as extreme enough. He hasn't done as many executive orders as he felt like he should have been doing. And I don't think that's a recipe for success going future. I'm hoping that he changes his approach. I'd love to work with him, especially on areas, such as education, certainly on critical issues. I've been in a leadership position, such as reducing the suicide rate among the military. There's many things we could work on together.
Isn't that kind of the crux of the issue with American politics a little bit? Because even when Republicans are in, they say you have to rally the base. I know Newt Gingrich was one of those that you always have to rally the base. He called Mitt Romney too moderate. Isn't that something that American politicians have to get over in Washington to actually come together, and that's what the people want?
Well, I think, yes, but from the standpoint of, I think you have to define what the base should be. And the base should be bringing together a majority of the American people, listening to the majority of the American people of what their issues are. What are their priorities? What are their concerns? For me, that's something I work on each and every day. When I'm in the district, I'm all over the congressional district. My car's not quite paid off yet. It's got 238,000 miles. All of it's servicing the district. It's listening what the needs are, and then zeroing in on those needs. So by defining the base, if you listen to the majority of American people, and that is Republicans and Democrats, independents, and people that are not registered to vote even, it's jobs. And so when we start to focus on things that are really out there on the edge, we really need to be looking at jobs. We need to be looking at energy independence. We need to look at the fiscal viability and sustainability of this country in terms of the debt. And we've done some good things on that, and on saving Medicare and Social Security. Because I think most people know those programs within 10 to 20 years are really looking at financial bankruptcy, and we need to show leadership.
Going back to the job aspect right there, Pennsylvania, Marcellus Shale, always a hot topic. You're on a couple committees in Congress that deal with those issues. Marcellus Shale, there's always companies that look to cut corners. How do you prevent companies from cutting the corners to make sure that actually stays a safe and viable technology for Pennsylvania, New York, the Ohio region?
Well, I think you accomplish that by showing that there's consequences to bad behaviors. And there is in Pennsylvania. The Department of Environmental Protection, and I have worked with, obviously I'm at the federal level, that's the state level, but that is where by law the jurisdiction for oversight in the natural gas industry lies, is at the state level. It's incredibly important to me, so I have formed a pretty strong relationship with all the secretaries of the Department of Environmental Protection, going back to the Democratic administration of Ed Rendell with Secretary John Hanger, who became a friend of mine, and as we work together on natural gas issues. And I'm very proud of what DEP has done across both a Democratic and a Republican administration to really put in place what are common sense but high standards in terms of the production of natural gas. That we're protecting life, we're protecting the environment, but we're also protecting the economy. We're advancing the economy by making use of this wonderful resource that God has given us. That's how you do it. And when I get reports, I read reports about companies wrongdoers have been caught, they've been fined, some of them put out of business. I have to say that that's good for the industry. Actually, it's good for the Commonwealth. It's that enforcement, that level of accountability.
Have you had a chance to speak with Governor-elect Wolf?
I have not had an opportunity to do that yet. I look forward to it.
All right. Good stuff from Congressman Thompson. We'll be right back. We'll talk CIA torture report. We'll talk defense spending. And of course, we will be talking healthcare. You are watching For the Record on WHVL. Welcome back to For the Record. We are talking politics with Congressman Glenn G.T. Thompson from Center County. Congressman, the CIA report, that's all in the news. Yeah. I'm just going to be blunt with this one. What was the point of the report?
Politics. Definitely politics. This was done by just the Democrats, led by Senator Feinstein, chairs the Senate, Intelligence Committee. I'm very disturbed by this report that came out. I think it put American lives at risk. I believe that it needs to be oversight with absolutely every aspect of these programs, the intelligence programs that the CIA is responsible for. My understanding is that there is, and including Senator Feinstein's committee that she chairs, and then we have a House committee that, and together they have purview and responsibility. They have oversight. They review these programs and approve them. And if there are folks if there are members of the CIA or whomever who break the rules, who break our laws, who overtly cross over the line, then they should be held accountable. That happened towards the waning days with Abu Ghraib, the prison, where I think we had 11 members of our military who were prosecuted and convicted. But the fact is, I'm really disturbed by the fact that one of the key individuals who has constant oversight, the intelligence that they receive in their briefings, they should have knowledge of how this is being conducted. And the fact that in the past they have supported it, they'd approved it, and now that all of a sudden they release this publicly, I don't see any gain for it except for politics. And I think the consequences are, number one, it puts American lives at risk because it will inflame hostile feelings against Americans.
We've seen that already.
It's already happened.
With some of the politicians in the UN condemning the U.S. Of all countries, North Korea, Russia's condemned the U.S. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it is all politics.
Cuba just condemned the United States. I mean, it is just, it is outrageous as this information was. First of all, if they had this kind of intelligence, why didn't the full committee deal with it and then provide the proper oversight to make those changes to prevent the abuses from occurring? Physical torture is not acceptable. It's outside the bounds of the laws that we have to have physical torture. Some of the reports that have come out, some of the instances in the reports obviously crossed over that line, but the committee that Senator Feinstein chairs is one of the two that has access to this information on a daily basis and has oversight, and also has a lot of input in terms of the funding for those programs.
Why hasn't, in your opinion, the media given a voice, at least a lot of voice, to the CIA directors who have said, we followed the law and some of this is being stretched to the extremes for the politics, as you said it? Why hasn't the media talked to those and given them a better voice?
You know what, I'm not sure, other than some of the media have the mainstream media have a very obvious, blatant political bias. And after 6 years of where we're at within the Obama administration, this is the only thing that I can think of that actually got the media to be able to use the names President Bush and Vice President Cheney. It's almost like they're trying to flip a remote control from all the other things that are going on right now. And giving the timing of it is really what's alarming to me. Common sense tells you that this type of information being brought up in a kind of a persecution way of the men and women who are working in the service of our country. What does this do for the terrorists within ISIL? I mean, doesn't this embolden them? Because this makes us look like, we're not willing to do what it takes to save American lives.
And they'll release this report, inflame those anti-U.S. feelings, but then this is the same administration that says a cartoon set off the events that happened over in Benghazi.
Yeah, but in all fairness, even the White House said it was inappropriate for this report to come out, that this was going to cost the lives of Americans.
Moving on a little bit, executive action from President Obama. That's a hot topic right now, especially with the immigration.
Yeah, it certainly is. The immigration issue, I was just with a class at State College High, juniors and seniors, and this is what we talked about. Tomorrow they're going to do their own proposal for an immigration bill. And so it was a wonderful exchange. And I pointed out to them, and I think this is an important starting point. Always start, what are the rules under which immigration occurs? And that's the Constitution. And you find it in Article 1, which is the legislative branch, not Article 2, which is the executive branch. Only Congress has the powers to define the paths of naturalization and citizenship. And then you have to look at, why do we have immigration? What is immigration about? And we had an interesting conversation. I had an interesting conversation with these kids. But in the end, it comes down to national security, and it comes down to a robust American economy. Those are really the primary two factors for an immigration policy. The president made a lot of threats, got a lot of primetime coverage of what he was going to do. The interesting part, he has taken no action yet. And so, which has put us in a position that when we go back into session, the 114th Congress, which is not that far away, there'll be my projection is within 5 session days, we'll take additional measures to make sure that we restrict the president from violating Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution.
Now, that new session in the 115th U.S. Congress, how important are those first 2 months as a whole for this entire country?
Oh, I think they're important. I think they're important from the standpoint of I think the American people need some confidence that we can, like we have been doing, get some things done. And so I really think the first couple of weeks are going to be extremely important. Certainly the first 100 days at a minimum. I think some people laugh when I say this, Andrew, but I think the big winner on the election was President Obama. And I say that because you think about it, the president can only sign into law what Congress will send to his desk. And there were 387 bills that we passed out of the House. 219 of them were 100% unified. Every Republican, every Democrat.
Those don't get the press coverage, though,
right? They
right?
do not get the press coverage. And yet, Senator Reid, the majority leader in the Senate, would not let the Senate take it up for a vote. Now, trust me, if it was 100% in the House, it'd probably get 60 votes in the Senate. And I think we're going to give the president a lot of opportunity to exercise his executive privilege within the Constitution of either vetoing or hopefully passing and the bills that we send him. We're going to give him lots of opportunity to exercise that authority he has.
Good stuff, Congressman Thompson. When we come back on For the Record, we'll talk a little bit of health care, and we'll also talk Cuba. But we're not going to blow any smoke here on FTR. Welcome back to For the Record. Congressman G.T. Thompson joining us here in studio. And Congressman, the recent lax limitations on the embargo against Cuba by the Obama administration, your thoughts on that?
I thought it was an interesting rollout, actually. The president did this in the context of a release of an American citizen who's been detained there for at least 5 years. And you know what, Andrew, what I really think this amounts to now, and this is just my perspective on it, but there is so much melting down in the country. We still have ISIS. We still have Ebola that's kind of out there. It's kind of off the radar, but not really in West Africa. So it's still, things are still going on.
It's not a hot story, though, for the national media now, conveniently. Yes.
Well, and I think this is like the president hitting the remote, sitting in the easy chair, hitting the remote control, trying to change the message. And I didn't see this one coming. I don't know of anyone in Washington that saw this one coming. And all of a sudden, with all the problems that our nation is facing, with all the issues and difficulties we're dealing with all the the healthcare uprising that is starting to occur with premiums now that employer-provided health care is getting hit by the Affordable Care Act. It's almost like the president's trying to, what was the movie that came out about 10 years ago, the tail wagging the dog, changing the message. Because I think this really is unexpected. I mean, and then it started out basically from a hero perspective, this one individual, Mr. Gross, terrible situation, really glad he's home. But then all of a sudden the story expands after that first moment, and not only do we're back at a Bergdahl moment where now we're releasing 3 spies, Cuban spies from the United States. So it starts out, it's a 3-1. That doesn't seem like real fair odds for exchange.
Does that show the lack of fear? I don't want to say fear that other nations should fear the United States, because I don't think they should. But does that show that maybe the administration lacks teeth, that they have to go through this big embargo lift against a country that's literally
and that was the next part of it that we heard about. All of a sudden we're going to ease 50 years of restrictions that were put in place by John F. Kennedy. I don't think other nations should fear. Nations should respect each other. But bullies and thugs, we should conduct ourselves in a way that you're darn right they should be intimidated by the United States of America, bullies and thugs.
The family who still runs that country, by the way, they did put nuclear missiles on that island. That is still the same family that's in charge down there.
They allowed missiles to be put there by Russia, who, there's a country that's acting up.
Well, they weren't a threat 2 years ago. Remember President Obama making fun of Mitt Romney.
But look where that went. Yeah, tell that to the folks in the Eastern European bloc that are now experiencing a return of the Russian bear.
We could go on all day about that topic, but let's get over to the health care. You brought up insurance premiums. I know personally speaking, it's For the Record, I'll just say it, my deductible went from $0 to $1,200, and my premium also went up. And also, I loved my plan, so no, Nancy Pelosi, if you like your plan, I was not able to keep my plan.
And you didn't like it after you read it?
I don't like my plan now, no. I don't like my plan now at all. The health care, is it going to survive? I mean, there's always these court cases.
Well, it's up to the American people. It always is. And I think a sign that something needs to be done, I think that was clearly a message by the Senate elections. Now, we had no U.S. senators up for election this time around, but clearly where you had Democratic senators who supported the Affordable Care Act, the number, Andrew, that I saw of House members and Senate members who supported and voted for that act, most of them are gone today. Large majority have been removed from office since that passed. So if the feedback from your employer in terms of election results is a metric to look at pass or fail on a piece of legislation, the Affordable Care Act has failed. Now, actual practical pocketbook cost is a failure. There's in Center County alone, there's a broker that covers county government, covers nonprofits, covers commercial insurance, employer-provided insurance. Minimum increase, I've been told in Center County is a 14%. Maximum is 300%. Nationwide, I think it's like 90%
How do we fix that?
Well, we have to go in and fix it. Two different things that we need to do. I absolutely believe that it would have been better to start over, but with a commitment that we need to put some things in place to bring costs down. The cost of health care was rising at a rate that was unacceptable. There were tools out there for access, so decreasing cost, increasing access, preserving quality and innovation, and making sure the patients are the ones making decisions, not a health insurance person or an elected official or a bureaucrat. So there are good ways to do that. We have some substitute bills to do that. We're going to continue to go after things. I think one of the first bills, I usually don't make projections, but I think the first week when we're back in January, you're going to see a 40-hour work week. We're going to, they took full-time work down to 29 hours, which has cost livelihoods for many Americans. We're going to restore that to 40 hours. I think, I'll with confidence say I would hope that the Senate would pass it also. We'll see what the president does it when we put him on his. So we're going to do a surgical repair. We've already fixed 17 parts of this. I think you're also going to see a bill to repeal the whole thing. I think we'll see where the Senate's only going to need. Because it is a tax now, as far as the Supreme Court, I think the Senate.
John Roberts with the vote on that.
You got that. So the Senate can pass that with 51 votes, which I think there'll be votes to do that. The president will veto it. Do we have the votes to override a veto? It's doubtful, but we'll see.
We'll close the show out with a bang. We'll go into the military spending. One of the things that we talked about off camera was the submarine fleet in the U.S.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to sit down and have lunch this past week with the Chief of Naval Operations, who this admiral actually is originally from Butler County. He's a Butler County, Pennsylvania boy, along with another admiral who works for the congressional office. Who's a constituent of mine in Freiburg, Pennsylvania, Clarion County. Our submarines are fastly aging out, and they are incredibly important for the for the national security of our nation. Many other countries have stepped up what they're doing with submarines. And the submarines do a whole lot more than security. When you look at telecommunications, the cable network, maintaining that. And so it's something that we really need to step up. I think we took some good steps with this past bill we passed last week, but we need to be vigilant on our investments there. And we got a lot of good Pennsylvania companies making parts that go into those submarines.
Congressman Thompson, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us here on WHVL's For the Rep.